One of the biggest misconceptions most atheists seem to have about religious belief is the nature of faith. Whether it be Bill Maher, the amazing atheist, Jacqueline Glenn, Richard Dawkins, like Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, pretty much plug in any internet atheist or popular atheist, even in academia, honestly. They all seem united in the argument that faith is just by definition to assent to that which is just entirely devoid without evidential support or rational justification. And really, it's quite convenient for them because if you can group together those whom you disagree with under that heading, well, you've really kind of won the argument already, haven't you? I mean, who's going to respond to that and say, yeah, I base my whole life around believing in something I have no rational justification for whatsoever? And well, actually, quite a lot of people do that if you really think about it. And that's actually one of the big problems, because, I mean, I do say that atheists suffer a misconception about faith, but that's not entirely true. There are a lot of religious believers, I should recognize, who do define faith that way, and really even balk at Christians who attempt to offer rational justification for any of their religious beliefs. This kind of thinking is referred to more often than not as fideism. But if atheists are going to be intellectually honest, they shouldn't assume that fideism is the default position. It's not at all. It's actually a relatively modern trend in Christianity, and Christians prior to the Enlightenment would have, by and large, found it to be kind of just not acceptable, even heretical. They would have found it to be nonsensical and not in accordance with scripture or tradition. The fact is that faith has a much richer definition in more ancient forms of Christianity, such as Roman Catholicism, for example. I mean, first of all, the Catholic Church affirms that the existence of God and truths about his nature lie entirely within the domain of natural reason to begin with. So even if faith has to do with belief without evidence, which it doesn't, it would only refer to revealed truth after, subsequent to, the existence of God, his divine attributes, the immortality of the soul, and debatably philosophical arguments for the incarnation, which is God uniting himself to human nature, are demonstrated entirely within the realm of reason. For example, the arguments from, contingency, change, causality, eternal truth, these would, if sound, I'm not making an argument for them in this video, I'll do that in other ones, if they're sound, then they'd establish the reality of pure existence itself as the source of contingent being and its divine attributes, which I'll just again discuss in a future video. And then from this you can make all sorts of implications, even about the incarnation, our natural end as consisting in union with this reality, and so forth. But again, all of this is within the domain of pure reason. So what is faith then? And where does it even come into the equation? Consider the analogy of a building. To construct any building, you first and foremost need the foundation. Now, can the foundation of the building exist without the building itself? Well, yeah. But can the building exist without the foundation? Well, clearly not. More to it, does the foundation point towards being completed in the construction of the building as a whole? Well, I'd say yes. The same here you would apply to the distinction between faith and reason. Now, reason is the foundation for faith. And the truths of faith are grounded in the truths of reason, which of themselves are incomplete, yet independently ascertained, without the fullness of faith, or the fullness of the building itself. We can know that God, or we can know a lot about God, with the foundation of pure reason, and I'll make videos about how you can do that in the future. But what we can't get at is the inner essence of God himself. With reason, we can only know that God exists, and what he is not, by stripping away from him what makes the world contingent and dependent in the first place, like composition, contingent existence, limitation, these kinds of things. But we cannot have direct knowledge of what he is, since his existence is unconditioned and infinite by virtue of the lack of limitation and contingency and composition. But we still long to know. Our intellect could potentially come to know, but only if God himself, pure existence, were to reveal himself and provide a means by which we can traverse that infinite gap. And this is where faith would come in. With reason, we can determine that God revealing himself and presenting a means would be fitting and somewhat expected. But what faith is assenting to this actually happening and being fulfilled in history. So we look back into history, given what we know from reason, can expect from it. Again, I will make arguments for that affirmatively in future videos, but try to follow the conditional argument here. We would see if there's evidence for that. If there is, then faith would be the intellectual assent to God as revealed in what we already rationally expected. It's built upon reason, and yet completes the quest of reason. Without each other, without faith without reason and reason without faith, they'd both be deficient, since faith would then be based on credulity and ignorance, as the atheist would say, and reason would be left unfulfilled, and in some respect contradicted, precisely by a lack of divine revelation. Only when they come together can they be rationally and intellectually satisfied. Of course, there should be some degree of historical evidence that this historical revelation is credible, and maybe I'll do a video on that. But if you can already expect something very much like the incarnation of Christ happening from pure reason, then the standard of evidence would not require as much as it would if we couldn't rationally expect it at all. So that's really all I have to say. Faith is built upon reason and completes it. And if reason establishes what I said it establishes, then faith follows as the fitting next step. If not, then would faith be irrational. But you'd have to deal with the rational arguments upon which the faith is founded in order to get to that conclusion. Attacking faith by itself is just silly, since it really all hinges upon whether the rational arguments are sound. And I'll present those rational arguments in future videos. I'll present arguments for the existence of God, his divine attributes. I'll show that given the nature of our intellect, it has as its last end fulfillment in knowing the essence of God, given what has been previously established, and the best way for those things to happen is through God uniting himself to human nature in order to make himself intelligible to us, to traverse the infinite gap. Many arguments I'll make on it that will show that from reason you can expect an incarnation. And so that's really all I have to say. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll be making more of these in the future. Thank you.